Welcome to the Candid Conversation Show. I'm your host, Marilyn Fontaine, artist and creative coach for women who want success and income with ease. Welcome to the Candid Conversation. It is episode 11 and I'm Marilyn Fontaine, known as MJ Fontaine, and today I'm going to talk about how I secured 10k funding. But before I start that, I just want to say we were scheduled to have Tracy James of Tracy James Design on the podcast, but unfortunately she was unable to make it, so that will probably be in 3 weeks' time, because this episode is going to be part of a series, a three-parter, where I'm going to talk about how I secured that 10k funding for an art project, because I feel that it's quite an important subject, and I'm getting more and more artists and creatives listening to this podcast and wanting to know how they can secure something and move their art forward. And it's not about securing the money, it's more about the project and allowing the money to come towards you. And what that opportunity gave me, it gave me the ability to relax, have money, good money in my bank account, because obviously the whole 9,000, 10,000 wasn't used all at once, but it enabled me to really relax when I was doing my art and make my coaching business grow as well. So it's going to be a three-parter, and today I'm going to cover my project Why. So really, my series and my project Why. So that's what I'm going to cover this week. Next week will be my art practice, how I was able to get the ball rolling, because you have this funding, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything to your timeline rather than sitting there just with the money, because you have to be accountable. And the last part will be my mindset, investment, and the synchronous events, So, this is really important. If you are a creative business, and especially an artist, and you want to apply for funding to support maybe a project that you're doing, it could be to push your business further. Me personally, for my art business, I only want to secure funding to be able to create a project, and that means to be able to create a piece of work that's, or put on an event. I don't look at funding as something to keep my business going, because I believe we can create opportunities when we operate as a business and we just step into that, that CEO mentality. And I haven't applied for funding since, because I've been making money to sustain myself. However, and also to buy my materials, what I need to buy. But there's been a few opportunities that has presented itself to me I'm not going to have to look for. So I might consider it. But where my mindset is today is, as a businesswoman, I can create that funding. So I'm not looking at it as I need money. I get sent grants all the time, or people saying to me, apply for this grant for your business. I don't want it, because I'm manifesting more than enough money in my business right now. So that's really, I'm really clear about that. But, I wanted to give people some support in how they could get funding. So I'll chunk back just before the pandemic, 2019. I had secured considerable amount of funding from the local council I worked with, because after doing so many free exhibitions as an artist with them, they added me to their list as a creative partner. And so a partner is when you put on events with them, the local council, in collaboration. So you manage a budget, you put on an event, and you create an evaluation at the end, and obviously, a spreadsheet of, how you're spending the money. So it's, as a business owner, this is really good anyway, because you are meant to be doing this as a business owner, like having a forecast, having a plan of where your projects are going to go, especially as a creative, where your projects are going to go and what's going to happen within each quarter. And so I was a partner and I put on a big event, 3-day event, and it was, I commissioned a poet to come and speak. It was during Black History Month. So I commissioned a poet to come and speak, and I was able to lead these women through an art technique, and in the end we did we did a presentation. Hold on a moment, my cat is crying. We did a presentation, and so that was really good because it really helped me start to look at bigger funding. So I kept that in my mind. And then I had an exhibition the following year, just at the beginning of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And so I'd programmed to do work for, oh my God, my mind is really crazy. It's just lost. I was programmed to do stuff for the Windrush Festival, and again, pandemic hit and Black History Month. So I lost a huge slice of my income. You know the story anyway, what happened. And because my exhibition was around my, my country, Dominica, and the women, and representing women from the past, that was my why. So I kept that going. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be my series because it is inspiring me. When I first created the artwork, the red pieces, which was a link to the previous Black History Month event, I was thinking about the women in my family. My aunt had just passed, and I was thinking about the women and the legacy that they're leaving behind, and the women of the Caribbean, post-Windrush. And so that became my series, but also it was my passion, and it was so close to my heart. And being a workshop leader and a sacred space holder, I constantly spoke with women from all backgrounds, and the story was always the same about rising from adversity and, just really holding the community, women holding the community, the matriarch being a strong force. Without the matriarch having power, communities would never, they never thrive. They never thrive. And so this was really important to the work that I was doing. And so, that my why was about leaving a legacy and telling the stories of my ancestors and the women who were maybe not held in reverence as they should do, especially Black women from the Caribbean and diaspora. And so that was my passion. So what I decided to do just before pandemic, during my exhibition, because I noticed the responses and the emotions that my work was evoking from even men, Black men, in connection to the mother and the women, that I I thought this is marrying up with my, my personal development, my spiritual work, and it really resonated with all my body, especially my gut, my solar plexus, and my heart. And that became my muse. The spirit of my business was about women's stories. And so my art project was about, I'm going to go back to the past to keep extracting the stories so I can create a more positive future for the people that are coming after me. And that became my spiritual business muse. It spilled out onto my business because I believe in creating income in a way that's easeful and joyful, but also leaving a legacy. So something changed and something switched by me doing that. So I was able to create the beginning of getting myself ready for funding. Unconsciously was creating a body of work that built onto each other. So I mentioned 2019, a Black History Month event where I did the poetry with DB Africa, and I did the art with the women. And during this actual event, I did a live painting that related to my body of work. So I did a live painting. It was a red series, so in red, while the women were talking about their poetry and going through their poetry process, I was working with the energy of the room and the vibe, and I created a piece of work. And so that was one part. So that was evidence of this work has been immersed in the community, and we've created poetry around it, and I'm going to continue this work and present it in exhibitions, but I'm also going to take a next step and create another version of it. So at the beginning of the lockdown, the Arts Council was giving 2,000 to artists. It was like a recovery fund, and nobody knew what was going on. My business is nowhere looked like how it does now, my coaching business. So I applied for the funding, and I thought to myself, well, this can be a time when I can go further. I could research more about Dominica and create a small pieces as evidence of this work. And so I applied for the funding, didn't think I would get it, and then got it. But when I applied for funding, because I'd done the work before, I was able to say, well, this is the next stage, because I know the response from the audience. I know how the response within myself, my experience, what worked, what could have been better. So now I really want to get more research. So I'm going to cost money for paints, canvas. So I got two large canvases and, several small canvases. I realised I wanted to work in oil paint, which was something for me. I used to use oil paints before, but I wanted to work with oil paints. I wanted to do research. There were several journals and books I needed to buy. So I wrote out all my budget of everything I needed, and that money was just for the materials. I didn't cost in my time for that, because obviously it was just giving us money, because it was £2,000. That would help me for a month just to know, or maybe 2 months part-time, because again, my money wasn't how it was now. 2 months part-time, and that would help me, just give me some space and a bit of money to start doing this, to help me through this pandemic, which I didn't know what was happening. So when I got this grant, it just made me so happy, and I thought, okay, this is a really good sign. So I was able to put that in motion, and I decided to do my research. I started to do a small sketchbook of the stuff I wanted to create. I started to collect so much information about the Caribbean, and I just got to work and started to create those pieces. But what that also did for me, it made me look at, if I got this, what else is available? What else is available? But it also made me feel more confident, in thinking, okay, I can apply for something else now. But at that time, I'd already applied for developing your creative practice, which was the Arts Council grant before. And I think I applied for £5,000, didn't get it. So put that on back burner and just left it. But my idea was totally different. My self-worth was totally different a few years, 2018. It was totally different. And so I just got on with creating my pieces, really grounding myself what was happening during the pandemic, pivoting my business and really changing up my business because I had to. And I started to create a practice for my art, like really get into research mode and say, this is, even if we can't leave the world, I've got enough time at home, I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to keep my time. So my certain days was my art days, put my podcast on, do my art, and I would just keep consistent. And I just created and made all these small pieces. But even though I had a sketchbook, the titles kept coming to me, like when I would show up and go into my studio in my home, the titles and the work would present itself to me. So it's almost like I surrendered, and then the subject would come and I would create the piece. So I didn't really plan as much in terms of this piece. I went downstairs, looked at my research papers, and then the title would come, and then I would get to work. And so I created, maybe 10 pieces. And then the big piece I knew was going to be of my mum in Tattoo. And at first I set out to use acrylic transfer, which is part of my process, and it just didn't work. And then I had to just use collage, and then I had to work that out. But that was really so nice to be able to do that and not worry about, I've got 100 different things to do. And so that enabled me to create sketchbook evidence, which I'll speak about in the next part next week. But I was able to create sketchbook evidence, research. It also activated my muse, which was the spirit of this work and my why. I also learned about Caribbean healing and practices and all the hidden stuff that is not put out there. And that is going to inform more of my work, the work for this year. But also I learned about myself that time and patience is really important, and commitment. And your application or your body of work that becomes successful, it never starts straight away. There's always a relationship between your journey as an artist and your experience and moving forward. So I repeat that again in layman's terms. Your journey and your commitment will always show your work in the future. So it's all about the journey and the distance travelled, rather than just showing up and painting. It's what you did beforehand that is really important and informs your work. So you can reflect, and this is why we have sketchbook practice as artists. It's really important, and we allow ourselves to do things rather than have artist block because it's got to be perfect. No, because part of the journey is the stages of your creations, because that is like try and tested. And this is why I advocate all the time that artists should always be learning and going into colleges or adult learning places, workshops, because you're always going to be inspired. It's not that you need to change your style, but it will always inspire you to create more, to be consistent and to push yourself and stretch yourself. And so for me, it was really important that I did those things, which was evidence. So Arts Council could see a timeline, and they could also see what I had achieved and what I had done before. And so that was the first stage. So that was the first amount of funding I had. And it enabled me to look at the world differently and what else could I gain. And that's when I joined a Self-Coaching Scholars, which was a coaching membership. It wasn't cheap, but I think the fact that I'd got the funding opened my eyes and made me more confident in my coaching business, and my income started to grow. So I was like, well, I want to keep this level of mindset, and I'm going to, I cover that in the next episodes. Mindset will be part 3, but I wanted to keep the mindset. So I was able to take more risks because I've covered this before in my Instagram post. When you do creative practices, you drop into that flow, which cancels out. Well, it doesn't cancel out. I'd love to think it cancels out, but it kind of lessens the effect of the part of the brain which is really critical. So what it does do, it quietens the voice, for me, of imposter syndrome, the more I'm creative. And so it enables me to solve more problems. And so when I was doing this work, creating this project, it was helping me create more options to my coaching business, because the neuro pathways of the brain can open up every time you achieve something. And I remember learning this in NLP, and it's a buzzword now because they everybody talks about neuroplasticity. But I remember whenever you create something new or you do something new, you do create these neuro pathways. And so by me having a reward for the work I'd done for the months, it enabled me to take more risks. And so with this part 1, what I find people tend to do is they talk about funding. And that's happened for me in the past, where I've applied for certain funding and I've not got anything. Or applied to be part of an exhibition and, you're not successful. But it's that rejection is very much part of the process as well. It works in art, it works in coaching, it works in relationships, it works everywhere. You need to have your 100 rejections, not so much in dating, but you need to have your 100 rejections, because you will know what's for you and you will strengthen yourself and not take it personally. But not to say it doesn't hurt, but I'm talking about art, not dating. But, not to say it doesn't hurt when, I get an application form and it says, you're not, you've not passed, or you're not, you're not been considered. But after a while, you just learn to think, okay, because there is a time when you will get that acceptance. And this is £2,000, £2,000. This wasn't even the big boys, which took me probably 9 months later. But I'll leave that for part 2. And let me know how you found this podcast. It feels like, for me, I'm talking, it feels like it's all over the place, but I can never just write and read from a written script, because it's not going to come out properly. For me, this is about being real, and this is my story, and this was my process. Everybody's process is different. However, there's 3 things that are really important with education, funding, and anything to do with a structure. and, meeting a deadline, even if you do it in a roundabout way. And that is consistency, being consistent with your practice. It doesn't have to be, I'm not talking about it being regular. I'm talking about it being consistent. So you, at some point, you're always doing something to do with your art. You're always doing your sketchbook practice and your research. You're always, when you're going to exhibitions when you can. If they don't inspire you, then, I've spoken about this before, use nature as your inspiration so you can get what you need to get to produce your work. Having a timeline of when you want that project to finish, to complete. Be realistic. They talk about smart targets, but be realistic with your timeline. If it's going to be a series of 10 years, then say it's going to be 10 years. That's not to say you can't show the work every year, but the project won't finish until it's ready. So be realistic with that timeline, but break it down into segments. I always have series: red, green, blue. Well, I think blue's coming now, but red, green, blue, turquoise-ish, mixture of different colours. We always have series and seasons. So that is really, really important, because if you don't document your work, if you don't have a digital footprint of your work now, so social media, how I feel about showing up on social media. Videos or any information that you have of your work, even when you have exhibitions, you have shows, or even if you're creating a work and you are not filming that, it's going to be hard for you to back that application up with for funding. And this is even as a business owner, a creative business owner. Always have your footprint. Always have your footprint. As I have an art page on Instagram, you will see my artwork uploaded. There's nothing else there but my artwork on my Instagram. I have any videos of my exhibitions, it goes to YouTube. So that's always evidence. And also my business coaching page, I've always got evidence of my work, my clients. If I'm doing something, if I'm doing a talk, it's documented so people can see the work. And this is how people ask me to come and speak and do workshops, is because they can see what I'm doing. Also, my clients can see that I'm doing something. It's exactly the same process. People want to see your timeline. And business creatives, when you get stuck, even as a practice, there should still be folders, and not just on Pinterest, but tangible things that you can put in a folder, or leaflets or articles that you can keep for yourself, for your practice. As a coach, I'm always updating my skills and saving information, because I want to be a better coach for my clients. I always want to be better. And so it feeds my creativity when I'm a better client, because I can get more stories. I have more access to people. I can help people more. It's in my DNA. And as an artist, the world around me. So I still have that practice of going to exhibitions and picking up postcards, especially when I go to the Tate or the V&A, because that will... And I only pick up what really draws itself to me. Because at some point, I have to reference what that experience had on my body, on me, rather than I'm looking at someone's art to be inspired. I just want to know what my physical somatic response is to that event. And so I hope this helps you. 30 minutes on the button. Next week, I look at the next part of my series on what I did, and that is my practice, again going into my scrapbook, music and spiritual practice, using the world around me as a muse, energy management, and also curating my external influences. So what I was allowing myself to have access to during those times, I produced my work and changed my mindset, which enabled me to go for the bigger guns with non-attachment. And so I would speak about the timeline from June to applying for the bigger amount of money and what made me do it in September. Hopefully I'll blow your minds with my lack of attachment to the outcome when I applied for that money. But yes, so that's what happened. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it's not all over the place, but I had to tell the story as if I was standing in front of an audience, and I had things written down, but I'm not going to just look at notes and read. So let me know how you experienced this episode and the information I've just given you. If you want support, now I don't write grants for people, business or otherwise, but what I do, I help you with your why, how you can create an income with ease. I help you have clarity with your why in your business with the same energy and process. We tap into what's standing in your way and what needs to be released and come into the world through you as a vessel. And that is done via my coaching program, a one-to-one program called A Highly Capable Creative. And so it's not, oh, my stomach's rumbling. It's not a group program. It's a relationship, a commitment that we get to work on your business or your creative project for 6 months. I have got international recording artists. I've got people in the theatre. I've got yogis. I've got reverends. I've got designers. I've got painters. Regardless of your discipline, but it's for creative women. So if you're interested in that, drop me a line. I'll leave everything in the show notes. Until then, bye-bye. If you want to be part of an incubator of some amazing creative women, then you need to join the Highly Capable Creative one-to-one program with me. To join, you can just contact me at www.mjfontaine.co.uk and book a sales call with me to join this amazing 6-month program where we get to work on your creative business. We also get to work clearing your blocks and also bringing that confidence up to 100 so you can stand in your agency and live your best life.